Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 podcast network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast. Check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, you can grab one of the last tickets to the Here We Still Stand regional event in Northwest Arkansas, first weekend of May. Come hang out with Chad and myself and watch a live recording of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. Wouldn't that be fun? It's a good time. There's gonna be a lot of good food, good talks, good people. It's a good place to hang out. So we'd like to see you there. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go over to the website, find it over there. While you're over at the website, of course, go peruse the academies. I don't know when it's coming out, Chad, but I know it's done. I've seen the trailer, and you can, yeah, very soon. Just keep checking. Very soon, you're going to be able to take that Church Fathers Academy course, and I am looking forward to taking that course myself. I'm going to jump in there, but there's a lot of other academies, and so Chad's done one. I've even done one on the Gospel of Luke. There's all kinds of them, and here's the thing: they're all free. So go take an academy course and see if you enjoy that. You could spend a lot of time over there. You going to get in that patristics there, Chad? You going to go brush up on the church fathers?
I would gladly sit in a classroom with Bruce. Yeah. The
Yeah.
dude's as smart as they come, and this is his wheelhouse. So yeah, that'd be great. It's gonna be a good class. I'm looking forward to it coming out. I mean, we do have, I don't know how many those academy courses we have, but there's a bunch of them. I've had people use them with like adult Bible classes
Mhm.
or family. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can use them. So it's a great resource.
Yeah, if you're a pastor and you're, looking for something to do, different to do on, I don't know, Wednesday nights or for Sunday school, that kind of stuff, and you're looking at different things to do, these work great for that kind of stuff because they're short enough that they can fill in that time spot, and then you can do Q&A stuff, and yeah, there's a very helpful resource. So check all that out. All right, we are in Job chapter 20. Chad, we were talking beforehand about the title. Of course, this title is not the inspired title, but it's just the heading that somebody gave this. But it is funny because it's Zophar speaks, the wicked will suffer. This could you say Zophar is a broken record, or Zophar says the same thing again.
Yeah. He just raises his voice. Let me say again what I said before, and hopefully this time I'll get through. Yeah, he's working with he's his basic syllogism is this: the wicked suffer, Job is suffering, ergo Job is wicked. I mean
Yes.
that's it. That's basically sums up Zophar, Bildad, Eliphaz, all these guys. I mean, even though they nuance it in different ways, they're all basically saying the same sorts of things.
Yeah, they're just serving up the same argument with like different words, right? Like, well, maybe if I say it this way, you'll
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, it'll finally get through. They're caught in their little uh theological box, where there's a direct correlation, always a causation between A and B. A causes B, and they can't think outside of that, which is sad and on a number of different levels. It's sad because, of course, it's false, but it's also sad because it makes them basically useless when it comes to provide any kind of comfort to people like Job. They can't think outside of this very kind of straight-jacketed formula that they place themselves in.
Yeah.
Bildad's been pretty quiet for a while now. I was checking to see what chapter. I knew it'd been a while, but it's been a few chapters back. Job 11 is the last time that he popped up there, and then he starts out. Back then, he started out the chapter by accusing Job of babbling and mocking and spewing forth a multitude of words. So I don't think his argument's going to improve much. That's also when he said he had this memorable line at like Job 11:3 or 4, something like that. God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You're getting
you,
Job is
you,
getting off easy.
yeah, man, you think your life is bad now? It's nothing compared to what you really deserve. So
I'm not exactly sure how that works. If my entire family and everything I own got destroyed, and then I'm covered in boils, sitting on top of a ash heap, scraping my my bubbling body with broken pottery shards, and they're like, dude, it could be worse. I'm like, hey, how exactly?
Yeah,
Like,
explain that
what?
to me. Because if you're talking death, actually, that would not be worse. That would be much better. It might
Yeah,
be praise for death. Well, his argument here in this chapter is here's the way I'd summarize it. The appetite of the selfish wicked is insatiable and it's short lived because eventually he's going to digest judgment and lose everything. So it's another wrinkle on this same old argument. He starts out here. Zophar the Naamathite answered and said, therefore, my thoughts answer me because of my haste within me. I hear censor that insults me, and out of my understanding, a spirit answers me. Do you not know this from of old, since man was placed on earth, that the exulting of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless but for a moment? So he starts out these first couple of verses. He's upset. You know, he feels like Job has censored him, which would be accurate. The Hebrew that's used here usually means something like discipline or chastisement or even exhortation, but here it carries this idea of Job has insulted him publicly, right? He censored him. I hear censor from you, Job, and it's insulting to me. And so he's going to school Job. You know, out of my understanding, a spirit answers me. I got all these thoughts inside my head that I'm going to make sure that you hear. And if you'll only listen this time, if you'll only listen this time, Job, you'll finally understand where you're wrong and where I'm right. And then he starts out verse 4 and 5 that I just read with basically stating his argument beforehand that, oh, this is old. This is traditional wisdom, Job. Ever since man was on the earth, everybody knows this, that the exalting of the wicked, oh, that's going to be short. And the joy of the godless, that's but for a moment. So that's kind of his summary statement. And then he's going to unpack that in these next few verses. He says, though his height, of course, he's talking here about the godless and the wicked, though his height mount up to the heavens and his head reach to the clouds, he will perish forever like his own dung.
yeah.
Those who have seen him will say, where is he? So we got quite the contrast here. His height is mounting up to the heavens, his head is reaching to the clouds. And we do have those images elsewhere in scripture. Oh, what's the one I was thinking? Oh, Isaiah 14 has that famous taunt against the king of Babylon who wants to, set up his throne in the heavens, but he's going to be cast down to Sheol. So I mean, it's a biblical image. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, right? That's what he's kind of uh, riffing off of here. But of course, you got to understand that this wicked and godless that he's talking about here is not just speaking generically, but this is an application to Job.
Right.
And it's gonna be basically he who exalts himself to the heavens will fall like, you know, dung into the earth, or be, as we would say in our modern version, will be flushed down the toilet.
It's weird too because we don't have any reason to believe that Job has ever really exalted himself. Uh,
No indication of that.
I mean, Job was described as somebody who would seem like they would not be that kind of person, that they didn't think
Mhm.
too much of themselves, right? That he was an exalted person, but not that doesn't seem as though he was
But
going
not
around.
self-exalted. Yeah.
No. And nothing so you have to think that some of this is about like Job, you're still thinking too much of yourself here. This accusation must be more applied to Job's arguments back and forth with them, and he's saying your words are too lofty. He's all poetic and stuff, and then just drops this dung in there, which is kind of jarring, right? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna rise up to the heavens and the clouds, but you're gonna perish like poop.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Memorable, but not extremely poetic. So he's going to switch from the outhouse now to dream and vision language. Verse 8. He will fly away like a dream and not be found. He will be chased away like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will see him no more, nor will this place any more behold him. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands will give back his wealth. His bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust. So, I mean, that language, this is so typical of so many of the speeches of the Friends. They they borrow biblical language, they will co-opt biblical metaphors, but which is fine. I mean, we do that all the time, of course. Preachers do that all the time. There's nothing wrong with using biblical image and using biblical metaphors, adapting biblical language when we want to teach or preach or write or whatever. Uh, but it's the application where he goes astray. And of course he's applying this to Job, and it's not fitting. So this flying away like a dream and be chased away like a vision of the night. And verse 9 is, I know there's some Psalms like that too, where yeah, you look for him and he can't be found. This prideful, godless person who's spread himself out, made much of himself, and then lo, he is no more, as the Psalms will say. So it's fine to say things like that, but you better be careful who you're applying it to. And you can't apply it to people like Job. And here he's speaking also not just of Job, but everybody like Job, right? His children are going to seek the favor of the poor. In other words, he's not going to leave anything for them. They're going to be impoverished. And so now they're going to have to uh, go out and beg for their food. And verse 11, when he says his bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust, means that he's not going to reach old age. So he's gonna die. No, this is not only the good die young. This is kind of only the bad die young idea, that you're going to be cut down while your bones are still full of youthful vigor, because according to this theology, there's no way that you can live to a ripe old age and remain rich and have all your children and have your health and everything like that if you're godless and wicked. It just doesn't work that way in the theology of Zophar.
No wicked old people. That's
Yes, right, right.
we all know that's true.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He so far hasn't like hung out in Washington D.C. at all. He doesn't know about
Never been there.
like corrupt
Yeah.
old people.
No, these guys seem just so naively inexperienced about the way the world works. It's like they're living in their little theological bubbles and have never experienced the way that real life works. I mean, these are kind of ivory tower thinkers. It's like,
Yeah,
do you know people? It's like, have you watched the news? Have you read anything? Have you just experienced life in general? Because it it's kind of it's just an unrealistic view of the way that life works.
it's a super simplistic theology. You're almost like had this little bit of knowledge about God, and then you like you constructed this very simplistic theology, which is just like God's good and he likes good things. He blesses good people. He doesn't like bad things. He punishes wicked people. It's very transactional. And then you just ignore the world around you and just say, this is what's true. And I don't have
Hmm.
to wrestle with the fact that that's not at all how reality plays out,
Yeah, don't.
which is not how you do theology. I mean, we still do this today where there's still entire sort of sections of theology that when forced to deal with suffering, have to explain it away. Well, it must be lack of faith. If you're sick, it's lack of faith. If you're suffering, it's lack of
Mhm.
faith. Like if you believed more, then you wouldn't. That's not dissimilar to this, right? Which is like, well, your problem, Job, is that you're just not you're not doing the right things, obviously, and that's not completely gone away.
No, no, I don't think so at all. In fact, I think it's the modern version of Job's three friends. Kind of name it and claim it. And if anything goes wrong in your life, well, we can tell you why. It's because you don't have enough faith, or you don't have enough this, or you don't have enough that. And so it all basically goes back to the individual sufferer as the cause of whatever's gone wrong in his or her life. I mean, I think you could make a pretty good argument, and I don't think I'm the first to say this, that the real test of any theology is how they address suffering.
Yeah.
So if your church is unable to really deal with suffering, has no real message to give to the parents who've just buried their 2-year-old child, or to the wife who loses her husband on their honeymoon, or whatever the suffering might be. If you don't have some way to speak to someone who is caught in a debilitating illness, then your whole theological system has some major holes in it, because and it's unable really to address most of what we deal with in life, which is in one way or another forms of suffering, either major or minor. So it's
Well,
good.
it betrays the fact that if you don't have an answer for suffering, I know immediately that what you do with the cross isn't what you're supposed to be doing with the cross, right? So like
Mhm.
immediate once you if you don't have a message for the sufferer, then I know that your message about the cross is inadequate.
Yeah. And you probably have not come to grips with the resurrection either,
Yeah.
because you don't have any way to offer people hope. Yeah. In short, if you don't have a message that really addresses people who are suffering, you need a whole lot more Jesus in your
Yes.
theology.
Yes.
Yeah, which is of course the I mean in in different sorts of ways, but still the problem of the three friends. They don't have any kind of theology of the cross, this understanding of who God is, and so they're always going to go astray in what they have to say to Job.
No, there's definitely like you got there's I mean no I don't know if this work has been done. Maybe Chad will do this work. Maybe this will be a book that he writes. But Job's three friends as theologians of glory is certainly applicable.
Yeah, yeah, they are. They're the patron saints of theologians of glory that you could say. Yeah, I mean they're only dealing with that which their eyes see, and according to their rational syllogisms that I pointed out earlier, then Job is wicked. It's the only way that they can deal with this. So where are we at? Verse 11 is what we just finished. So verse 12 is when he begins his culinary arguments, I guess you could say. He talks a lot here about eating and the mouth and digesting and vomiting and swallowing and all this kind of stuff in the next few verses. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, and again he's continuing this description of the godless man, godless according to his estimation. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, though he hides it under his tongue. So I always get the picture here of like he's got some hard candy or something. He's sucking on it. He's got it under his mouth. So he's got that there. Though he is loath to let it go and holds it in his mouth, he's savoring the sweetness. Yet his food is turned in his stomach. It is the venom of cobras within him. He swallows down riches and vomits them up again. God cast them out of his belly. So he's going to continue in the next few verses, but you're getting the idea here. Uh, First of all, you know the enjoyment is short lived. So he's got this hard candy in his mouth, we'll say, this sweet evil in his mouth, and he's rolling around with his tongue, and he's not wanting to let it go. He's wanting to keep it in there as long as possible. But when he swallows, when it goes into his stomach, then all of a sudden what was sweet is turned into cobra venom. He's going to swallow it down, and then the next thing you know, he's going to be vomiting it up again, because God is going to cast it out of his belly. Then he continues, verse 16. He will suck the poison of cobras. The tongue of a viper will kill him. He will not look upon the rivers, the streams flowing with honey and curds. He will give back the fruit of his toil and will not swallow it down. From the profit of his trading, he will get no enjoyment. For he has crushed and abandoned the poor. He has seized a house that he did not build.
Don't you feel like Job at this point, as like this guy takes a breath, is like looking around? I mean, like, who are you talking to? Like,
You're,
what are you even talking about? Yeah, these wicked people are crushed and abandoned the poor, seized the house that he what Like, is there someone else here? What are you even talking about, man?
Yeah, I do get that. I do get that impression that Job's reaction would be, you just spilling forth this multitude of words that have no application to anybody who's listening to
Yeah.
you
Is there someone standing
whatsoever.
behind me? Like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
Yeah, the whole thing is, I don't know if you'd call it a backhanded insult to Job, but it's certainly an insult to him because, of course, this is his whole point is that this is Job. Job, you're the one. You had that sweet in your mouth, and now you're having to vomit it up because God turned it into the poison of a viper once you swallowed it down, and you're not going to get any enjoyment. And here's what you've done: you've crushed and abandoned the poor. You seized a house that you did not build. And of course, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. This,
No.
I think, a lot of this comes down to pure conjecture. I mean, we know these guys came from a distance, not like they lived next door to Job. So it makes you wonder how well did they know him? Are they just at this point conjecturing, coming up with these wild fantasies of the evils that Job has committed that they are unaware of, but that, according to their perspective, obviously Job must have done. Otherwise, why would he be suffering the way that he has? So verse 20, he's going to keep up with this belly imagery because he knew no contentment in his belly. He will not let anything in which he delights escape him. There was nothing left after he had eaten. Therefore, his prosperity will not endure. In the fullness of his sufficiency, he will be in distress. The hand of everyone in misery will come against him. To fill his belly to the full, God will send his burning anger against him and rain it upon him into his body.
That seems like direct, right?
That seems pretty direct. Yeah,
See all those
yeah.
boils? You feel like you got like sulfur falling down on you from heaven, Job? Is that what that feels like? You got the wrath of God
Mhm.
poured right into your body there? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's staring Job down when he says these words. And now he's gonna switch the metaphor a bit. He's gonna talk about weaponry and how he's been pierced through. So this verse 24, he will flee from an iron weapon, and a bronze arrow will strike him through. And that's not enough. He's got to draw out the image here. It is drawn forth and comes out of his body. The glittering point comes out of his gallbladder. Terrors come upon him. So this idea of you run away from one thing and you run into something else, like you flee one danger and you run smack dab into another danger. That is very common. One of my favorites is Amos 5:19, where Amos says, "It's as if a man fled from a lion and a bear met him, or he went into the house and leaned his hand against the wall and a serpent bit him." So and you find the same thing in Isaiah 24, Jeremiah 48. So that's again another biblical image where you run away from one danger only to come face to face with another danger. And that's what Zophar is saying here. So he flees from an iron weapon, maybe there's an axe or sword or whatever, and then he turns around and a bronze arrow pierces him through, and comes sticking out of his body, pierces his gallbladder, tears come upon him. So there's no escape for people like Job is his main point.
With Job, with the book of Job being poetry, there's not a lot of poetry that features the gallbladder. Like an arrow sticking out of your gallbladder is it's a that's a
No,
that's a different, like maybe your heart or something like that, but the gallbladder, as we said before, this is a little bit different in the Old
this,
Testament. Like that's
this is a new one for sure. Yeah. Uh, he finishes this out. I'll do this. Read the rest of the chapter, 26 through 29. Utter darkness is laid up for his treasures. A fire not fanned will devour him. What is left in his tent will be consumed. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. So all creation is turned against him. The possessions of his house will be carried away, dragged off in the day of God's wrath. This is the wicked man. So he's going to wrap it up with this verse. This is the wicked man's portion from God, the heritage decreed for him by God. So, man, if you're godless, like Job obviously is, then there's no hope for you. And you notice he holds out no possibility of repentance in this chapter. And I find it very interesting, too, that according to Zophar, all these terrible things that are happening, the loss of your possessions, the loss of your health, loss of, your children begging for bread, all of that, those are considered to be the worst things. And there's really nothing said here about the worst thing being that you're cut off from God himself.
Yeah.
It's like he's kind of thinking very materialistically here. These are all the terrible things that are going to befall you. And he's not even going to mention the fact that, oh, yeah, also being cut off from God is part of this. He's focusing very much upon kind of the material, the visible, the tangible, rather than what state you have in relationship to God.
Yeah, there's no and some of that was like earlier there was this sort of argument from them like, hey, reach out to God, Job. You gotta
Hmm.
confess your sin. Like surely he'll surely will, if you just tell him, if you just admit it, what's going on, like surely he will help you. It seems like a lot of that's been abandoned, and now it's just like more they're just saying, well, the problem, Job, is that you're wicked. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah, I
Of
don't know if
course,
it's because their frustration levels have increased, and so they're now at the point of just like keeping up accusations, or if they've given up on him, or what the deal is.
yeah. I know this. I mean, we're about to see it, but uh, this is the circle will continue because you hear all this. I mean, and Job's response is going to be like, uh, yeah, except for the wicked do prosper though. So
Yeah,
like, what's the problem here, dude? Is that theoretically that's all nice and sure. Uh, but the problem is that take a look around. Like that's not how any of this is working.
yeah, yeah. He's going to point out over and over this coming chapter that, as you say, that all sounds nice in theory, but do you do you actually observe what's happening in the world? How many people actually live exactly contrary to the way that you have described? So, yeah, the ESV chapter heading, "The wicked do prosper." You could also title this chapter, "You're all wrong." That's Job's response, because he's gonna. This is the chapter where I think more than any of the other chapters, Job does directly quote and then refute his friends. So this is a little bit different kind of chapter. One of the commentators I read, Francis Anderson, points out that this speech, so this is a quote from him. This speech is unusual for Job on several counts. It's the only one in which he confines his remarks to his friends and does not fall either into a soliloquy or a prayer. So, in other words, this is where he's going to basically take a lot of the things that the friends have said, not just Zophar, but Bildad and Eliphaz too. And it's a little bit difficult at times because he doesn't always say something like, you say, and then give them a quote. Sometimes he's just alluding to something that they've said, or even providing a summary statement of, in general, what they've said. And then he goes on to refute it. But kind of keep that in mind when you're going through this whole chapter. This is Job's most explicit refutation of the claims that his friends have made. So he starts out, keep listening to my words and let this be your comfort. Bear with me, and I will speak. And love this. After I have spoken, mock on. Joe, 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 you got to admire him. I mean, the dude's been through hell on earth, and yet he's still got some rhetorical stamina here. He's not afraid to give it right back to the guys. And you can't see or hear this in translation, but there's a switch between the verbs that are used here because bear with me is in the plural. So he's addressing all the friends. So you guys, we might translate it, you guys bear with me and I will speak. And after I've spoken, now this next verb is in the singular, so presumably addressed directly to Zophar. After I've spoken, Zophar, mock on. So it makes sense that he's going to specifically allude to him when he's given this response. In fact, uh, that verb in Hebrew for mock is the one that Zophar has used before, back in chapter 11, verse 3, where he said to Job, "Should your babble silence men, and when you mock, shall no one shame you." So this is Job kind of getting back at him. So give me a chance to talk, Job. And after that, you guys can just, pick up with your mocking and you can continue on after I finished.
Yeah, which is a you know, to refer to what they're saying as mockery is an insult because they think that they're uh you know giving you this great theological soliloquy, and they're just like, well, I mean, let me give you all of these like poetic words and explain how the world works to you. And Job has dismissed it as mockery.
Yeah. Yeah, he's popped their bubble. I'm sure they're all pretty proud. They finish their speech and they're sitting there kind of in their self-satisfaction, saying to themselves, boy, that sounded good.
Uh,
Job's got to listen this time
that was
after
some
that.
real wisdom I was dropping
Some
right there.
wisdom I dropped on him. Yeah. And then Job comes back. Mockery. That's all this is. Verse 4. As for me, is my complaint against man? Why should I not then be impatient? I'm assuming what he's saying here is, listen, you guys, I'm not talking here about a man-to-man complaint. I'm talking here about issues between me and God. So my impatience, the way that I'm speaking, should come as no surprise to anybody. Who would not be impatient in my situation? Look at me, he says, and be appalled and lay your hand over your mouth. When I remember, I am dismayed, and shuddering seizes my flesh. Why do the wicked live, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? Their offspring are established in their presence, and their descendants before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, and no rod of God is upon them. Their bull breeds without fail, and their cow calves and does not miscarry. They send out their little boys like a flock, and their children dance. They sing to the tambourine and the lyre, and rejoice to the sound of the pipe. They spend their days in prosperity, and in peace they go down to Sheol. Let's stop there for a second. So keep in mind that he's talking here about the wicked. This would, like, if you took these words and you put them into the mouth of one of Job's three friends, then they would be describing the life of the righteous. But Job is here describing the life of the unrighteous. So he starts out by basically saying, you guys did a lot better when you were silent. So look at me and be appalled, lay your hand over your mouth. In other words, rewind things to back at the beginning when you sat there in silence with me for a few days before you begin opening your mouth. And then he begins in verse 7. I read 7 through, I think, 13. And this is him basically saying, everything you just said about the life of the godless and the unrighteous is untrue because everybody knows I've experienced this, and everyone who's not naive has experienced this, that the wicked don't die, they live. They reach old age. They grow mighty in power. Their offspring are established, so on and so forth. So this is his way of presenting a more realistic version of how all life often works, undermining then the naive theology of his friends.
When he says to look at me, be appalled, put your hand over your mouth, it seems that he's saying that based on your theology and based on what you think my situation should be shocking. Like you should be speechless, right? Like you should gasp, right? And you should have nothing to say because my situation is obliterating like your entire theology, and now but instead you look at me and you spout this theology, and it's wrong, like because look at how the wicked live. Like you should be trying to figure this out with me.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no mystery left in life to them. I mean, everything is so clearly black and white to them, and they will force that. They will force their theology into any situation, even though an explanation is they'll force the theology in any situation, even though the situation itself speaks against it.
Yeah.
Just refuse to deal with the the way that life often works.
Yeah, there's no sense in which they like approach Job and they're like, okay, we have to rethink everything. Like, what do we do with this
Yeah.
at all? Like, even though like you totally should be in that situation, you should be like, what is happening here?
And then Job's going to wrap this section up with more of this. So after saying they spend their days in prosperity and in peace, they go down to Sheol. He takes it up a notch. He says in verse 14, they say to God, depart from us. We do not desire the knowledge of your ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit do we get if we pray to him? Behold, is not their prosperity in their hand? The counsel of the wicked is far from me. So these wicked have been described as godless and as wicked, and yet they're prospering. And now Job is giving illustration of the way that they view God. So it's not like these are atheists in the sense of modern philosophical atheists. These are like practical atheists who basically don't deny the existence of God, but basically want nothing to do with him. So here's what they say to God: leave us alone, more or less. We don't want to
Yeah.
know your ways. We're not going to pray to you. What what good would we get from praying for you? Because after all, this is verse 16, their prosperity is in their hand. In other words, they've already got it in their clutches. They've got what they need. They don't need anything else. And then Job wraps it up by saying, this is the way they speak, but the counsel of the wicked is far from me. In other words, I'm not going to go down that road, but this is the road they go down. This is the way that they think and reason. And you can kind of understand if things are going so well for them, why would they want to change it by all of a sudden turning to God and praying to him?
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that the wicked sound like this when they're talking about God. That is not what I sound like, right? This is not what you've heard from me. This is not how I'm now. I might be saying God depart from me, but for like an entirely different reason,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah. Give me a break is what Job is wanting.
Yes, yes. But I'm not sitting here. Not no. I'm not. I am praying. I do want to know His ways. I'm not. I'm not. This is not me. So you are. Uh, take a listen to what the godless people sound like, and you will find that that's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah, so this is just more the disconnect between lived experience in this world and then the way that things actually work according to the way that God is at work in the world. And this reason you can't look around and do your theology based upon what you see happening. You can't, look at the life of the wicked and say they're prospering and build your theology off of that,
Yeah,
because in the end, that's going to lead you astray. Any more than being like the three friends and seeing someone suffering and saying, "Oh, obviously you're wicked." Our theology has to be based upon the revealed word of God, specifically how it's revealed in the work of Christ. And if that's not how our understanding of how God works is determined, then we're always going to go astray because we're trying to build our theology based upon experience rather than upon what God has revealed to us in Christ.
that's right. All right, man. Well, we are out of time, so we will leave it right there. We'll be back next week to hear the rest of what Job has to say about, hey, you guys are wrong. The wicked do, in fact, prosper. He's got more to say on that topic, but we'll have to wait until next week. Chad, I will see you then.
All right. See you then.